This was my third tour, so I'd seen some unnerving things out on the sand, but nothing like what we ran into that night. I was stationed with the rest of my platoon at a forward operating base deep in the Iraqi Desert, somewhere near a place we'll call Black Ridge, a barren stretch of land that looked like something straight out of a Clint Eastwood movie. The mission was routine, a recon of possible insurgent activity in the area. Nothing this group hadn't done 1,000 times before, but something about that night felt off from the start. The platoon was quieter than usual as we geared up. Maybe it was the way the moonlight painted the sand in an eerie silver glow, or the fact that the wind had suddenly stopped, like the whole desert was holding its breath. As our point man reached a ridge overlooking a shallow riverbed, he immediately hand-signaled for us to halt. We huddled in place as he surveilled the area below. After a couple of minutes of peering through his night vision scope, he waved us up, never taking his eyes off the area below. At this point, I was getting antsy over what might be the holdup. As the rest of us reached the peak of the ridge, our point man just motioned to the riverbed below and said, "Down there." That's when we saw it. At first, it was just a faint shape in the distance, a figure standing alone, perfectly still, like a statue carved from the shadows. Between the light of the moon and with the help of the scope, there was no sign of a weapon. I thought it was one of the locals, maybe some poor shepherd who got caught up in the wrong place at the wrong time. Regardless, we had to investigate. We called out. Nothing. But as we got closer, it didn't move, didn't flinch. Our commanding officer, whom we'll call Mr. G, motioned for us to approach, so we did. We were now roughly 20 yards away when the situation really got hairy. More figures rose up from the shadows like they'd been waiting for us, cloaked in tattered robes, faces obscured by hoods. We all hit the ground and raised our weapons. There was a palpable dread in the air, like the kind you only feel when you know you're walking into something beyond your comprehension. "Hold your fire," Mr. G shouted. With this level of tension, pretty much anything and everything could go wrong. This sure seemed like an ambush, so the urge to fight was there, but something about these figures, it felt like they were less alive and more a part of the desert itself, as if the land was manifesting these shapes to warn us off. Then, it happened. One of the figures raised an arm and pointed directly at us. Not at all of us, just me. My stomach churned, and I swear, the temperature dropped a good 20 degrees. At first, I was engulfed by an overwhelming sadness, but after a few moments, that was quickly replaced by a heaviness unlike anything I'd ever felt before. "Fall back," Mr. G ordered, his voice tight with something I'd never heard from him before. It was fear. "Now!" he yelled. We covered and moved back up the ridge. As we scrambled, the figures didn't chase us. They just faded, disappearing into the blackness of the desert like they were never there. We reported the incident as soon as we got back. The lieutenant listened, his expression carefully neutral as we described the figures, the cold, the overwhelming sense that we weren't supposed to be there. But what struck me the most was his reaction, or lack of it. It wasn't shock, it wasn't disbelief, it was more like recognition. "You saw them at Black Ridge?" he asked, his voice low. Mr. G nodded. "Yeah, we all did." The lieutenant exchanged a look with his superior, a captain who had joined us during the debrief. They shared a knowing glance. Something passed between them, some unspoken understanding. "Did anyone else get close?" the captain asked. "Anyone touched?" Mr. G shot me a look. No one got close. I wanted to speak up and tell them about the figure pointing directly at me, but something in the captain's expression stopped me cold, like he already knew. "All right," the lieutenant said, closing his notebook. "Forget what you saw. It wasn't insurgents. Not your problem." "Sir?" I stammered, my voice cracking. "What was that out there?" He stared at me for a long moment before answering. "This isn't the first sighting of something out there. Sometimes the desert plays tricks on you. Leave it at that." We were dismissed, but none of us were satisfied with the answer. Needless to say, it was a sleepless night. We would have additional patrols out at the ridge, but never experienced anything like that again. And over the years, whenever our group was together, we all did our best to explain what we had seen. The best we could do was that we inadvertently walked into the middle of some tribal or religious ceremony. All I know is, I've never experienced anything like it, and God knows, I hope I never do again.